Hey everyone, welcome back to another session for the Google MENA Digital Days. My name is Sachin, a Google developer expert, and in today's video, we'll learn how to build sophisticated conversational actions for the Google Assistant. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, a brief introduction about myself. My name is Sachin. I'm a Google developer expert, especially for the Google Assistant. I'm also the Chief Technology Officer of a company called Chiplo Life, which is a healthcare company based out of Dallas, Texas. I also head the Google developer groups in Doha. So for people who are actually joining us live today, I have my social media links below. So make sure to check them out and directly connect with me on Twitter if you have any questions. And I have also my website as well as Medium, where you can actually go and read a lot of tech articles as well. So before we actually get started with our session today, I would highly encourage that you guys check out this new channel that I've started recently. So this is one way where I can actually contribute back to the community. Before it was through physical talks, live sessions where we used to have conferences and speaking sessions and workshops. But with the whole pandemic situation, I thought this was a better way to reach a much more larger audience. So do check out Tech with Sach. Go to youtube.com/Tech with Sach. I will share the links in the comments section, and you guys can subscribe to the channel. You're going to have topics on machine learning, Google Assistant, chatbots. We have cloud, web, and mobile. So there's a lot more of content that's available for you. And I will also be doing weekly sessions as well. So subscribe to the channel and looking forward to see you there. And for today's session, what we'll be building is we'll already be looking at how to build sophisticated conversational actions. If you are a beginner who has not built any conversational actions, do not worry. Everything that we do today, we have step-by-step tutorials directly available for you in the slide. It's available in the Tech with Sach YouTube channel as well. So you can actually go and check this Code Lab 1 and Code Lab 2. And this is also a video where we've done an interaction between myself and a Googler called Jessica. So she's a Google developer advocate for the Google Assistant. So these three videos in depth will cover a lot about what we're building today. So with that being said, let's actually switch to the Google Assistant. For people who are actually joining us for the first time, make sure that you check out the comments, the slides, and the links will be available for you. And with that being said, for people who are joining this for the first time, and if they are thinking to build for the Google Assistant, this is the best place. Now, with that being said, what is Google Assistant? So Google Assistant is your own virtual assistant from Google to get things done in the most meaningful and helpful manner. So the Google Assistant is already available across 1 billion plus devices. So why is this very important for us as developers? Is you have access to 1 billion plus devices. In fact, that 1 billion that we have over there might have been doubled by now. So it's just that the assistant platform and the devices integrated with the assistant has a wide array of devices are there. You're talking about your Android phones, iPhones. It's also available in smart speakers, smart watches, the speakers like the Google Home Mini, and you also have smart displays like the Nest Hub. It's also available in Chromecast and TVs. So with a whole lot of the Google Assistant integrated with more than 1 billion plus devices, it's great for us as developers to go ahead and build and make use of this platform. We have a wide array of language support as well. So as you can see, this slide just captures a short portion of it, but there's a lot more languages added as we speak. Now, speaking of the Google Assistant, there are three components or three parts to it. One is the Google Assistant itself, which is your own personal virtual assistant that enables conversation between you and Google to get things done. So that's the Google Assistant. And for people who have not tried Google Assistant, I highly encourage that you actually try out the Google Assistant in your Android phone, or if you have iPhone, you can also download the Google Assistant for iPhones and try them out. It's pretty cool. Now, with the next part of the whole thing is devices. So devices with the Google Assistant built in. As I said, the Google Assistant is integrated and built in across your Android phones, iPhones, voice activated speakers like Google Home, smartwatches, anything that's integrated with Google Assistant, you have the capability to reach that. And the third part is the most important thing is for us as developers, it's what's the platform. So Actions on Google is the developer platform that helps us define or fulfill our actions. So that's the platform where we actually go and build our actions. And for people who are wondering, why do I keep saying actions? Think about actions as applications. So we are used to saying mobile applications or web applications. In the voice world, we don't call them as applications, we call them as actions. So if at all you're searching for articles or things in YouTube, yeah, go ahead and search for voice applications, but at the same time, you can also search for conversational actions. Speaking about conversation, so that's what we'll be building today, or in fact, it's already built. We'll be decoding what are the elements and new features that will help us to build a sophisticated or a beautiful conversational action. So on a high level, we're talking about the Google Assistant and you as a user, what actually happens behind the scene. So over here you have, this is probably going to be the user who will give a user input either through voice or text. The Google Assistant will understand, does all the natural language understanding. It will take care of this, basically passing the information, what the user has said, into the right format and call the HTTP request. And this is where your action lies. So your action will understand that, okay, I've got some request. Let me pass that information. If there's any backend logic involved, check that and send back the response. And once the response is sent back, the Google Assistant again is involved in passing that information and send it back to the user, either in terms of voice or text. Okay, so from a very high level, this is what is actually happening behind the scenes. And let's talk about Actions Builder. So if you've actually used to building conversational actions for the Google Assistant, previously we used to do it across two different platforms. First, we used to build the application in Dialogflow, and then we used to integrate that with the Google Assistant through the Actions on Google platform. So Google has actually gone back to the drawing board and said, let's actually build one full ecosystem where the developers can actually come to the Actions on Google console and start the journey of building a conversational action right from the start till the end. Okay, so they don't have to switch between going back to another platform to design the conversation and then come back to the Actions console to start testing it. So even though Dialogflow is a great tool for building chatbots, but especially for the Google Assistant at this point, I feel that the Actions Builder, which is the new tool introduced by Google, makes it a whole lot easier for you guys to build conversational actions. So speaking of the Actions Builder, this is a high-level overview of it. This is how it would look. So I'll take you through what are these different sections of the UI. So Actions Builder gives you a powerful and easy-to-use web-based IDE that's integrated into the Actions console. Okay, so you can see in one UI, you have everything that you require for your conversational action, which is overview, develop, test, deploy, analytics, right from building to testing, to deploying your action, and finally seeing the analytics. Everything is available for you directly with the Actions console and the Actions builder. On the left side, so we have the top menu. That's what we just went through. The left menu, it lists all the components like intents and scenes, etc. So we have these are intents. We will go through them today. And there are scenes as well. So these are all the scenes. And for each component that you see on your left side, when you click on it, this is your build area. So this is where you'll see all the details when you click on each of these items. And finally, you have the details section, which is when you click on any component within this part of the screen or component, it will actually show you more options. So keeping it simple, this one specific UI would help you design conversational actions. You'll somehow kind of get a blueprint or a wireframe of actually designing your conversations. So as developers, we are more tuned to building like logics and algorithms, but for conversations, we have to actually think about it in a different way. And I'll come to that specific point later in the session as well. So before we actually start understanding the different features that we'll be looking into today, let me actually show you what exactly that the final action would look like. Okay, so I'm quickly switching to the Actions console. So again, you can go to the Actions console by going to console.actions.google.com. Okay, so once you create a project, you can actually start the whole process. Again, all of this information that you see over here is thoroughly covered in the tutorial videos. So do check them out. And all the resources are already mentioned in the slides as well. So you can check out the links in the slide links and get this information. So I'm just going to show you what exactly our final action would look like. So this is the test simulator. So if you have an Android phone, once you build this, make sure you're using your same Google account that's linked to your phone. You'll be able to directly test out your action that you have built directly from your phone. So for people who don't have access to that, people who, let's say you don't have access to a smart display, the test simulator is an option for that. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on Talk to My Test app. So this is the way you trigger your action.
Right. Let's get the test version of my test app. A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome back to the mythical land of Griffinburg. Before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told?
So as you can see, the initial message is a wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome back to the mythical land of Griffinburg. Before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told? So this is like a greeting message. And again, you can see that all of this is available to you on the right-hand side. So this section is called the event logs. So let's see what happens when I say yes.
To help you on your quest, a dragon, a translator, or a compass.
Okay, so again, I have three options. So either if I have a smart display, I have the option of clicking on these suggestions. If you're on a smart speaker, of course, you wouldn't have a display. This would be read out to you. So these options, Dragon, Translate, or Compass, is totally up to you, right? So you'll be giving these as voice inputs. You can do the same thing for smart displays as well. So I'm just going to click on one of these.
Will be awestruck by the beauty and power of the ancient dragon. Much to your dismay, the townspeople fall into dispute over who will receive the honor of riding the dragon first. You return home from your quest without everlasting glory or a dragon. That is what I see for you. Would you like to choose a different option and explore another future?
So It's given me some information, and then if you look at the conversation, once it has given the basic or the main information, it says, would you like to choose a different option and explore another future? So it's also giving me an alternate path. So while building conversations, you always have to think about how we can build conversational actions that is enticing as well as interesting every time you interact with your action. So let's say that if you build an action with a greeting, then you click on a button, then you get a message and you end the conversation. That's not good. I mean, that's not a good conversational design, because at but just by doing that, you have pretty much given the user an impression that, okay, this is what the action can do, and probably I'm not going to use that ever again. So let's say if you're building a game, conversational game action, or if you're building like a trivia or quiz, you always want to keep the responses in a way that is new and fresh for the user every time they interact with the conversation. So in this case, if I choose yes, it will take me back into choosing another option as well. So let's say if I choose compass over here, which is another choice.
You find the mystical and ancient library of Gryffindor. Among its infinite stacks of dusty books, you find one entitled Wisdom of the Ages. By the time you've read the 50,000-page tome, the townspeople have forgotten their problems. You will write the second edition of Wisdom of the Ages, but of limited commercial success. That is what I see for you. Would you like to choose a different option and explore another future?
So at this point, I'm done with the conversation. I can always say no.
It pleases me that you are satisfied with your choice. Best of luck on your quest. Farewell.
So instead of ending the conversation abruptly, we can even give a final message like, it pleases me that you're satisfied with your choice. Best of luck on your quest. Farewell. Okay, so this is the complete action that we're going to decode today, understand the basics, the fundamentals of how we can actually build for the Google Assistant. And as I said, if you're looking to build this from scratch, all of these are available to you in the videos, tutorials, step by step. Now, with that being said, let's understand the basic fundamentals, right? So going back to our presentation. So scenes. So scenes are the building blocks for your action that processes user input and typically generates the response to the user. So everything that we're talking about today is the conversation design that you're going to build is based on scene. So if you remember the greeting, that's going to be one scene that we had. And after the greeting, based on the choice yes or no, we were taken to a fortune scene. So that is another scene in the conversation. And finally, it will also ask, would you want to do this again? Would you like to hear your fortune again? So that's again another scene that we have created within the actions builder. So think about designing your conversations in the form of scenes. So it's very different from how you were used to if you were building on Dialogflow before, basically based on intents and entities. So over there, you're at the mercy of intents and entities, and then you have to handle the context, and it starts getting a bit complicated when you're actually building much more complex conversational actions. Now, with the scenes, you control the entire conversational design from start to finish. So if you have any questions in regards to the actions builder or the session that we're doing today, feel free to leave your comments in the comment section, and we'll definitely have a Q&A session to answer those. So speaking of scene intents, so we have these custom intents. So intents are very similar to what we are used to in Dialogflow. And for people who are not familiar with Dialogflow, it's okay. We'll cover intents in depth today as well. So intents basically defines the user input that the action can understand. You define the training phrases for these intents. So think about it in this manner. Whenever we are kind of building a voice application or voice action, the input that's coming from the user is always going to be different. Each user is going to interact with your application in a different way because you don't have a screen to interact with. You're at the mercy of the user who's actually speaking to your action, to the action. So in that case, the intents are responsible for understanding that this specific user is actually trying to say or trigger this specific action. And the intents are where we actually pass in training phrases. So what we do as uh, developers is, instead of writing code, we actually go in and train our intents or train our action to understand the conversation that the user might give. So in this case, those are called training phrases. So when a user says something that matches or is similar to a training phrase, the corresponding intent is matched. Okay. And moving on from intents, I kind of touched about what are training phrases. So examples of what a user might say to match an intent. So whenever if I say like, so in our example that we saw, we had dragon, translator. So those are options. Then again we had yes and no. So those can be intents. Yes intent and a no intent. So whenever the user says yes, the action would identify that, okay, I've received this input called yes. Is there an intent that is defined to understand that? If there is an intent, then what should I do next? So training phases are very similar to that. So the training phases will identify based on what the user is actually giving back to the conversation. Now, transitions. If you looked at the test application that we did, or that we showcased earlier, there were different screens or scenes that we were transitioning to. So basically, transitions means you define which scene to transition to once the condition is met. So imagine in our previous example, we had a question asked, we said yes. Based on that yes, it transitioned to another conversation. I gave in another input, say dragon, and based on that dragon input, it then transitioned to another scene. So scene by scene, based on different inputs, we are kind of transitioning to different scenes. So those are basically done using transitions. And moving on to slot filling. Again, slot filling is a function of conversation logic that allows you to collect a set of slots. Slots are nothing but data that you extract from the user. So the slots from the user through natural back and forth conversation without having to create multiple intents. So let's say that if you want to capture very simple information, key information that you want to capture from the user. So let's say in this case, it was like dragon, translator, and compass. So you want to capture that key information. So that can be done through slot filling. And what are slots? Slots are data that you want to extract from the user. With that being said, let's actually decode the action. So I'm going to switch back to the actions console. I'm going to quickly run through the actions builder, the UI, and then I will actually go through the entire flow for you. So when you build an action for the very first time, you'll have set of options that will actually help and guide you choose which action that you want to build. You have like custom, you'll have games as an option. So you can always choose the one that's appropriate for you. So in this case, since we are building conversational action, it was a blank project. Once the conversation is built, what you could then do is you'd automatically be taken to a screen like this. So here you can see you have quick setup. If you're looking to build for multiple languages, you can always go and click on this modify languages in settings. You can choose the language that you want. And for each of these languages, you'll be able to do the same flow that we have as well. Now, Build your own action is there. So once you click on develop, I'm just going to close all of this to avoid confusion, and we'll get there. So the first thing that you would come to is the settings. Okay, so once you have created a new project successfully, you would be automatically taken to this screen called settings. So you can see over here, since the actions builder and the actions SDK is a new tool, you'll get a pop-up similar to this. You can also watch the video that's available over here. And for people who are actually trying to build conversational actions for the very first time, it's very easy to build. You have a lot of tutorials available, resources available, and once you build it, for example, you can even build conversational actions based on templates just by using Google Sheet. I've done a lot of sessions based on that as well in the past, so do check those videos. And the display name over here is what your action, this is basically your action name or voice application name. So let's say that if whenever we did the test, you say we triggered that by saying talk to test app. So instead of saying the test app, that's the default one because we haven't created a action name. So once you deploy your action to Google and once it is approved, not just you, anyone who has a Google Assistant built into their devices can always trigger your action by just saying talk to your action name. So if your action name is, let's say, Dr. Music, you'll always go and click on, you can always interact with it by saying talk to Dr. Music. You don't need to install anything. You don't need to go to Play Store or do any of those. As long as the user knows your trigger name, your users can basically trigger your application or voice action at any time. And the good thing about this new tool is there's always this help section that gives you more information. So over here, if I click on this, for each of these sections, it will actually give all the necessary information that you need. So over here, if you see, caution, if you have multiple actions project that use the same display name, the simulator chooses one at random. So for consistent testing results, use unique names or release channels for each action. Okay, and then you can always learn more about that. There are certain guidelines that you need to follow. So let's say you can't just give talk to Google over here. So there are reserved keywords. You cannot use any other brand names that you do not own. So make sure that you actually follow those guidelines. And the best way to actually also make sure that the action name or the display name that you give is proper, you can always click on this, click to hear the pronunciation of your name. So from a voice standpoint, you need to make sure that the Google Assistant understands whatever the action name that you're seeing. Okay, so you can always click on this, train it, and see if the Google Assistant is able to understand it is being translated properly or not. Or modify the pronunciation if it doesn't sound right. So you can do that. Now, I'm just going to leave it empty for now because this is a test project. I want you guys to understand all of the other components as well. And choosing the different voices, you have the option to choose from a list of voices as well of what your action would sound like. So this was the settings page. Now from settings, as you can see on the left-hand side, let me see. Sorry about that. So on the left-hand side, once we have the settings, then we have the main invocation. So this is the main invocation part, which is responsible for triggering your action. So on settings, we defined what our display name or action name should be. The main invocation is basically responsible for triggering that. So here you can see whenever the user says talk to invocation name. So let's say if it was Dr. Music, talk to Dr. Music, then this gets invoked. So your action called Dr. Music would get invoked over here. So I'm just going to move this to the side just so that you understand what's actually happening here. So as I said, the Actions Builder is more like a wireframe or a designing tool, right? Which can actually help you design conversations. So as you can see, instead of just writing too many intents and entities, now you can actually understand what is exactly happening in terms of the flow. So over here, I can see some comments saying the pronouncing of names is one of the most difficult to distinguish. Yes, I agree with that. Again, depending on what you choose for your action, make sure that it's one of the reasons why I touched this point is from your standpoint, your action name might actually sound simple, but if based on for many reasons, if the Google Assistant is not able to understand the pronunciation and cannot translate it properly, it's going to be the same for other users who are actually trying that out as well. So make sure that you try call some of your friends and see how they are able to uh, try out the pronunciation, and if the Google Assistant is able to understand the translated text is what you exactly intend to. So that's a good point. Now coming back to the main invocation, so when the user says talk to the invocation name, we invoke our action, so our action gets triggered, and then immediately you can see what happens. So when I click on this over here, you have multiple options that's available. So as I said, every component within this section, so it's like moving from left to right. So you click on the left menu, your details or the main section over here gets reflected, right? And within this main section, whenever you click on any components over here, it will quickly navigate to different parts. So let's go back here. Let's click on the invocation name. So basically our action. So when your action is invoked, what should happen next? So over here, you see call your webhook is one option. So again, for this specific action that we have built, we are calling a webhook. We will cover that and see what exactly happens. Or I can just simply say send prompts. So if I do send prompts, you have the option of both YAML and JSON. You can enter the text that you want, a simple response, and that specific response will be read out. So let's see what happens now. I'm just going to revert it back to how it was. Let's go back to the greetings. Greeting is the webhook that we have mentioned. So that's available to you on the left side under webhook. So click on webhook. You'll get to see what exactly is happening. Okay. Again, all of this code is there. So if you're actually thinking, oh, there's code involved, maybe I don't want to get into this. Not necessarily. You can actually build this entire thing even without code. But here, if you want to build more production ready, more sophisticated conversational actions, you need to handle different scenarios. Why do we have this greeting handler? Is if you look at it, let's just understand how we build conversational actions. Every time you talk to the action, if you just say a wondrous greeting adventure, welcome to the mythical land of Griffinburg. Based on your clothes, you are not from this around these lands. It looks like you're on your way to an epic journey. Now, that entire sentence is pretty long. For the first time when the user is talking to it, it's fine because that's kind of setting the tone and the theme of your action. But imagine every time you trigger your action, if you're hearing the same greetings, you're going to actually get tired of it, right? So in this case, what we've done is we can actually use some of these conditions over here. So if the conversation.user was last seen, so if the user has already interacted with your application once, you don't need to go through that initial long greeting. You can just keep it very quick. You can just say, A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome back to the mythical land of Griffinburg. So, what I can actually do right now is I can take this one, and just so that I can show you how the actions builder works. If I go back to the main invocation, instead of calling the webhook, I will disable that. I will send a prompt, and the prompt is basically going to be a wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome back to, I would say, EDG MENA. Let's see what happens now. So we've done this. You can go and click on save. So typically, the action takes some time for you to for it to actually reflect on the test. So once your message is saved, let's go to test and see if what actually happens when we trigger our application. Okay, so let's reset the test and trigger our test application.
Let's get the test version of my test app. A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome to GDG MENA. Before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told?
Okay, so as you can see, our prompt that we have added, prompt is nothing but the message that you want to show, display back to the user. So in this case, instead of calling the webhook, it's actually getting this information directly from the prompt that we have defined, right? So it's a static message. You get to see this, and then you also see, before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told? So where is this coming from? So that's an information that we haven't mentioned. So that's actually coming from another scene. So let's go back to the main invocation. What I'm going to do is, you see here, once the prompt is read out, it will transition to another scene called start. So all the scenes that's available for this action is over here. If you want to create a new scene, you can always go and click on create new scene over here and add a new scene, or you can also create a new scene directly from here. Okay, so that's what is actually happening. So it will transition to the start scene, and within the start scene, there's another message which is what is being read out. So I'm just going to go back, revert it back to webhook, and call the handler as greeting. So now I hope that you understood what exactly happens behind the scenes. Invocation happens, action is invoked. What should we do next based on the condition that we have specified here? Either send prompts or call your webhook. The webhook is called within the webhook condition. We actually have a condition to check whether the user is coming for the very first time, or if the user has already been there, you can actually run a random short message instead of a long one. Once that is done, it will transition to the start scene. So if you look at the wireframe, you can see how it is transitioning to a new scene. So the moment I click on the start scene, you can see that it has immediately gone directly from the UI itself. Now, once it is transitioned, you come to the start scene. What happens first? So you see all the components that's available over here. You have on enter, condition, slot filling, custom intent handling, and system intent handling. These are all the elements that's involved for each scene. Every scene has all of these conditions, right? Or all of these components. Now on start, if you look at on enter, immediately when you transition to the scene, if you want to display a specific message, you can actually enter that in the on enter option. So when you click on enter send prompts, here you can see that a send prompt is added. Again, over here, the speech is, or the response is, before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told? Now, based on this specific response, we have to see whether we can also add suggestions. So, from an ideal use case standpoint, again, these are some of the things that you need to take into consideration while designing your conversation. If I don't add this yes and no as suggestions, let me actually do that. So I'm just going to remove this and I'm going to save this. So let's go back to the test. So we're going to trigger our action again. So this is going to call a webhook.
All right, let's get the test version of my test app. A wondrous
So it has understood that
Welcome back to the mythical land of Gryffindor.
based on our webhook, we have already come to this action before. So we have a very short prompt that is being displayed from the webhook. Then it has transitioned to the new scene, which is called start scene. And on enter itself, we have another prompt, which is before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told? So again, the way how you ask questions should be narrowed down. So you always think about designing your conversation in the way that you direct the user to a specific action. So here you can see like the possible questions, the responses that you can give is yes and no, right? So if I say yes, it would still work. But by showing suggestion chips, you're doing two things. By default, you are directing the user that yes, I have two options. Maybe I can just directly say yes or no directly by seeing that, or I can click on those suggestions. So going back to the main invocation, going to the start scene. Within the start scene, it comes here, and I'm just going to add back the suggestions. You can also add suggestions directly from this link over here, these chips that you have. You can also do that. Now, once the suggestions are there, you go back to the test. And the reason why I'm showing you all of these techniques is for you to actually start thinking about designing these conversations in a specific manner. As much as possible, I reiterate and say that direct your users for every conversation turn, direct your users to a specific action. Don't leave it as an open-ended response. So let's say if your greeting was, hi user, welcome, or hello, welcome to this specific action. And if you just left it that way, the user wouldn't understand what to do next. So he might actually give a response that your action might not understand, and it will never proceed further. So your action will almost try and revert back to like, I did not understand that, as part of like the default system intent error. So if we, after adding the suggestion chips, you can see that now we have the yes and no as suggestion chips. So when you click on yes,
what do you choose to help you on your quest?
It's automatically going to another scene here, right? So if you look at what's happening, it's moving to another scene. What do you choose to help you on your quest? A dragon, a translator, or a compass. And then again, I have these suggestion chips at the bottom, right? So again, feel free to stop me at any point if you're not understanding certain concepts. These are like the core features of the actions builder. And the reason why we are going through this in detail is so that you can actually confidently start building this with all of these points in mind. So I'm just going to go back. We'll see where we left off. We were in the start scene. So we came to the start scene. We came to on enter. We had these messages. So also another point to note is prompts. take into account that prompts are like a queue. Every time you add a prompt, it goes into like a queue, right? So as you have seen, based on what we've defined a prompt in the first main invocation as well as on the on enter of the start scene, both of them are read together because it's immediately transitioning to the scene, and the first thing to read out is this. Now we had the yes and no intent. We've just defined it as suggestions, but how do we make sure that when the user says yes, go to the next, what happens next? So you can actually understand that when you come to this section. Over here, you can see that when yes is matched, you transition to a new scene called fortune. So again, you can see under scenes, you have the fortune scene. When no is matched, you basically end the conversation. It's a very simple concept over here. So we had the suggestion chips over here. And then when yes is clicked or yes is being told by the user, it will then do the intent handling. And when yes is matched, so you'd wonder what is this yes. So if you look to your left hand side under intents, we have actually created yes and no intents. So if you click on yes, so these are called intents. So as I said, intents are nothing but like what your user is trying to convey. So you're trying to understand the intent of the user and then do the specific matching. So over here, you can see you can add training phrases. So you create a new intent, add training phrases, and you can add a lot of these data. Over here, the idea is to create yes and no as like a generic intent so that we can use it across multiple scenes. So you can see that we can say yes. If you're on a mobile, people might just type Y. So that's why we've added that as part of the training phases. So even if I say I would or tell me, it will understand that this is a yes intent. So going back to start scene, we've come to yes intent. When we say yes, the intent is matched. So the intent handling will say, what should I do next? Right? So when the yes intent, so when you click on this, you can see use intents to define which user. So this is where we have defined the yes. Okay. And what should happen? Transition to a new scene called fortune. So that's exactly what is being displayed here. So I can see one of the comments saying that the most important thing is the training phrases, I think. Absolutely. The training phrases needs to be well built in. So your intents are a way for how the users are actually communicating with your action, and your action is able to understand what the user is saying and then link back to a specific scene based on that. So another thing that I've seen a lot of people try and do is overtrain your training phrases. So give it a lot of information, a lot of training phrases. Eventually, what happens is that the machine learning will not try and understand what exactly the user is trying to say, because the same kind of training phrases might also be available in other intents. When you're building a large conversational actions, I've noticed that that's something that people typically end up doing. So make sure that you have enough training phrases that is concise to what your intent is supposed to mean. Okay, so let's transition to this new fortune scene. From a fortune scene standpoint, as you can see, we've come transition to a new scene over here. So if you remember, we had the fortune scene, which is here. On enter, we've not added any prompt here, but we have some conditions. And again, based on conditions also, below that you see slot filling. So if you remember, we had the ability to kind of capture information. So what are slots? Slots are nothing but the data that you extract from the user input. Okay, so here chosen options is one of the slot filling, and you tag it with available options. So what is available options? So if you are familiar with Dialogflow, these were these were called entities. So in Actions Builder, these are called types. So if I click on the available options, if you remember, based on the test simulation that we did, the action would say, would you like to choose compass, translator, or dragon? Again, all of these entries or types can also have synonyms, right? So you can add more values to this. Like compass can be like through, user might say compass, or user might also say direction, or user might also say guide. So if any of these things are matched, it will resolve back to compass as the key. Okay. At the same time, you have translator and dragon as well. As you can see, you can add different key value pairs to understand what the user is saying. Not exactly that the user might just say translator. The user might also say communicator, because based on how you drive the action, the user might not say the exact keyword. You can actually try and add as many as values as possible that you want, so that you can link it back to the key. So these are types. So we have available options as these. This is the correct options that the user might choose from. You also have unavailable options. So let's say if the user gives in something that's unrelated to your action, like phone, money, magic, or horse, then you can actually capture some of these over here and kind of give a custom response to that as well. So going back to the fortune scene, we have conditions. So if you look at the conditions, what happens? Conditions are basically when a specific scenario or a condition is met, then you can transition to another scene. So in all of these conditions that we have added, you can see if scene.slots.status is equals to final. That is, if all the slots that's defined here is completed, you have gathered all the information, and the chosen option is dragon, then you transition to the again scene. The same way, if all the slots are filled and the chosen option is translator, you transition again back to the again scene. Okay, so if you click on the chosen options, we have available underscore options over here. We make sure that this slot is required. So this checkbox is important. If you want to make sure that for your action to continue to the next scene, you have to make sure that this slot value is captured. And at any point, if you want to access this information, this is how you access it, by sessions.params.chosenoptions. And what are we doing next based on the slot is, you can see the prompt that we are asking the user. So when it comes to the fortune scene, it will go to the slots and see, it will come to this first one, chosen options. It will come down and set all of this. We have said that this slot is required, and then we have done the chosen options. And based on that, we say, what do you choose to help you on your quest? A dragon, translator, or compass? Again, we give suggestions like before, so that the user gets to pick one of these three. And based on this prompt, the user might click dragon. And once the dragon is set, it's part of the available options type, right? So we've defined under available options, we have defined these three options. Now, once the user has provided that slot filling is met. So we've kind of configured that slot, and it will go to the conditions. So in the conditions, it will check if the scene.slot.status is equal to final. Yes, I've received the slot, so this condition is met. And the chosen parameter options, chosen options is dragon. Yes, I clicked on dragon. It will then transition to the again scene. So let's see what happens in the again scene. So once you go back to the again scene, so what we're trying to do over here is add a game loop. This is called a game loop. You're not ending the conversation just like that. Once a user gives an option, you have a custom response. You're asking the user to, again, would you like to try this again with another option, right? So that's exactly what's happening here. It will come to the again scene. we have a on enter, we have immediately a response with saying speech saying that this is what I see for you. Would you like another option and explore another future? Again, we have the yes and no intents. It will check when the user says yes, the intent yes is matched. And based on that, what happens? We go back to the fortune scene. So it will go back to the fortune scene, and then again, you might choose instead of Draken, you can choose translator or compass. If no is matched, you end the conversation. So that's pretty much in terms of this whole thing. So if an unavailable option is provided, like any of these, then that's also handled. So if I go back to test, let's see what exactly we go through.
Here's the test version of
So this is our initial greeting.
a wondrous
This is the prompt from our
Welcome back to the
start
mythical
scene.
land of Gryffindor.
If I say yes, we are transitioning to the fortune scene.
A dragon, a translator, or a compass.
Now over here we have three options that or suggestions that was provided. Now these three suggestions are captured. This is the information that we need to capture. These are the slots that we need to capture. So I click on dragon,
The people of Gryffindor will
and we
welcome
have
the
a
quest
custom
to the
response
power
over
of
here.
the ancient dragon.
And once the response is done, it will go to the again scene. So would you like to choose a different option and explore another future?
Return home from your quest without everlasting glory or a dragon.
So if I see,
That is what I see for
so if I
you.
click on
Would you
yes,
like to choose a different
if I click on yes, it will go to the again scene.
to help you on your quest, a dragon.
If I choose another translator,
With the help of the translator,
you have
the right
another
to
message,
in Gryffindor,
and
your
then
quest
finally you
will
can click on no to end the conversation.
It pleases me that you are satisfied with your choice. Best of luck on your quest. Farewell.
So I hope this specific session was useful in terms of understanding some of the key components and features that's available for you as actions in the actions builder. And you might be wondering, what are these no match, no input, and cancel? These are system entities. So at any point, if the users say something that your conversation is not designed to, it will go back to these system intents. And you can also go and modify these as well, so that you can make it more fun and related to your conversation as well. So match, no input. Let's say if the user didn't actually give out a response and he was thinking about something and there was a timeout, then it goes to no and no input. And at any point, if the user says cancel, it will end the conversation. So these are system intents. And for each of these conditions, you'd be wondering, where did that long message come from? So for each conditions, you can see there was a send prompt. You do the condition, and those responses for each dragon, translator, and compass is defined here. Again, the purpose of this session was for you to understand how to use the actions builder, understand the flow. If you are looking for all of this in a step-by-step manner, again, it's available in Tech with Such. So you can go to youtube.com/Tech with Such. All of the tutorials are available. Also join me for my weekly sessions or live stream. So the last one was based on machine learning tutorials for beginners, where we created 4 machine learning applications in 1 hour. So I'll be doing this. I'm more than happy to interact with all of you. So looking forward to see each one of you uh, during the upcoming sessions as well. So we have a lot more great content coming your way in the GDG MENA channel. So make sure to subscribe and like this video. And with that being said, I hope you found this session useful. My name is Sachin, and see you all in the next one. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for the comments. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me in Twitter and also on my channel. So thank you so much.